The T-Rex. For decades, it's basically been treated as this ultimate two-dimensional movie monster, right? Well, today, we are completely tearing down that myth. In this explainer, we're going to reconstruct the Tyrant King from the ground up. We'll be using hard evidence to build a picture of a dynamic, mathematically complex, and just absolutely awe-inspiring biological organism. So here's a question for you. How many T-Rexes ever lived on Earth? I mean, it sounds like a totally impossible question, doesn't it? Like, how could we possibly look back millions and millions of years and put a hard number on that? Well, keep this question in the back of your mind as we go, because we're actually going to calculate the exact answer a little later on. No way, right? But we are. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, the tyrant's humble beginnings. Second, the mathematics of monsters. Third, hunting in terrifying packs. And finally, number 4, the Hell Creek ecosystem. All right, section 1, the tyrant's humble beginnings. Let's get into it. So if we zoom way back to the Middle Jurassic period, we're talking roughly 165 million years ago, mapping out the tyrannosauroid family tree reveals a pretty surprising truth. For most of their 100-million-year history, they were actually ecologically marginal. Basically, they were underdogs. That massive gigantism we always associate with T-Rex, that was a really late evolutionary trait. It was strictly restricted to just the final 20 million years of the age of dinosaurs. To really wrap your head around this dramatic shift, you kind of have to contrast the extremes. Imagine the early basal tyrannosaurids, like the guanlong. They were roughly human-sized, covered in these fuzzy proto-feathers, and they even sported these gaudy, elaborate cranial crests. Now compare that to the late-stage tyrannosaurids. I mean, we are talking about 13-meter-long, 7-ton apex predators with literally bone-crushing jaws and those famous withered two-fingered forearms. It's like night and day. Now, the crucial thing to understand here is that those iconic tyrannosaur traits evolved piecemeal, way before they actually got huge. Take the Guanlong, for instance. It weighed a pretty modest 170 kilograms, but it featured the very first broad U-shaped snout. So it's kind of like the architectural blueprints for the Tyrant King were being drawn up ages before the true giant monsters actually arrived on the scene. Moving right along to section 2, the mathematics of monsters. Okay, let's bring back that impossible opening question. We're going to use a biological principle called de Moivre's law, which basically relates a living animal's body mass to its population density to find our answer. By looking at their massive ecological footprint, scientists calculated that at any given time, there was a standing population of about 20,000 adult T-Rexes roaming North America simultaneously. Just imagine 20,000 of those things walking around at the same time. And it gets crazier. If we take that standing population of 20,000 and multiply it across the roughly 127,000 generations they existed, well, the math comes out to a staggering 2.5 billion individual T-Rexes. 2.5 billion of them living and dying over their 2.5 million year reign on Earth. That is just mind-blowing. But hold on a second. If 2.5 billion of these animals walked the Earth, where in the world are all the bones? Well, there are only about 32 relatively well-preserved post-juvenile T-Rex skeletons sitting in public museums today. Think about that for a second. That means every single fossil we dig up is literally a 1 in 80 million statistical miracle. It's like finding the ultimate needle in a giant geological haystack. And that leads us to section 3, hunting in terrifying packs. So this brings us to a huge shift in how we view these animals, completely dismantling that whole lone wolf movie monster myth we all grew up with. Enter a concept called parasocial carnivores. These are predators that engage in collaborative, group-based hunting, and they even show extended parental care. And when paleontologists look at recent discoveries, almost like forensic detectives investigating a crime scene, they are finding that T-Rex fits this exact profile. Just a quick look at these forensic sites reveals a pretty undeniable pattern. For example, down in Utah, an ancient flash flood drowned a diverse-aged group of Teratophonius altogether. Then, trackways up in British Columbia actually show 3 tyrannosaurs moving in absolute lockstep. Over at Dry Island, up to 26 Albertosaurus individuals were preserved in a single bone bed. And in the Two Medicine Formation, 3 Dasyphilosaurus were found right side by side. What's the takeaway here? It heavily implies that these diverse-aged tyrannosaurs lived and hunted in highly coordinated, absolutely terrifying family packs. You definitely wouldn't want to run into them. Finally, we arrive at Section 4, the Hell Creek ecosystem. I want you to completely forget the barren, gray, volcanic wastelands you always see in the movies. That's not how it was. The Hell Creek Formation was actually a warm, subhumid coastal plain sitting right along the western interior seaway. It was this incredibly vibrant, lush, temperate environment. Picture it filled with flowering plants, tall palm trees, and sprawling wetlands. This was the rich, subtropical, almost tropical-feeling world that these dinosaurs actually dominated. Now, a recent large dinosaur census from the Hell Creek area brilliantly illustrates our demographic data from earlier. Ceratopsidae, dinosaurs like the Triceratops, they make up about 40% of the population. But here is the shocker. Tyrannosauridae actually account for 24% of the large dinosaurs. Think about what that means. They were so incredibly common that they actually outnumbered the plant-eating Hadrosauridae, which were sitting at just 20%. It was literally an entire ecosystem just brimming with apex predators. Nature's wild, right? I want to end this explainer today with a pretty profound thought from paleontologist Charles Marshall. He's actually the researcher who calculated that 2.5 billion population figure we talked about. He said, "When I hold a fossil in my hand, I can't help wondering at the improbability that this very beast was alive millions of years ago." I really hope this leaves you with a deep, memorable appreciation for just how fragile and improbable the science of paleontology truly is. Seriously, what other impossibilities might be buried right beneath our feet at this exact moment? Keep wondering about that, and I'll see you next time.